వెన్నెల కోలు పూసి కాసిందే కోలు
పున్నాము వెన్నెల కోలు పూసి కాసిందే కోలు
నీరు నిమ్మల కింద గన్నెర్ల కింద వంగి పూలే రంగ కొంగందుకునే వంగి పూలే రంగ
Gentlemen, and welcome to this afternoon's session. And for this session, we have a wonderful book that will be in focus, The World That Belongs to Us. And we have with us the two editors of the book, Aditi Angiras and Akhil Katyal. Friends, some of you who have been regular visitors to Hyderabad Literary Festival have already met Akhil a few years ago at HLF, and welcome to HLF, Aditi. This is your first visit to HLF, even if virtually. Welcome. And friends, just a very quick intro to the two editors. Aditi is a poet, writer, and artist based in Delhi. She is the founder of Bring Back the Poets, which is a queer collective of South Asian poets. And she has recently edited with Akhil Katyal, The World That Belongs to Us, an anthology of queer poetry from South Asia, which will be the focus, which will be in focus in this session. Akhil Katyal is a writer based in Delhi. His most recent book is like Blood on the Bitten Tongue, Delhi Poems. And with Aditi, he has co-edited this wonderful anthology, which I request both the editor to show to our audience. And Akhil was the International Writing Fellow at the University of Iowa in 2016, and he teaches creative writing at Ambedkar University, Delhi. Welcome, Akhil, and welcome, Aditi. And we are, we are delighted that the two of you could, make it. I don't know if it would have been possible in a physical festival, but I'm sure you would have loved to escape the cold of Delhi, to the warmth of Hyderabad. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon, and we will be playing the videos, ladies and gentlemen, of the poets who are featured in this anthology a little later in the session. But we will begin with a quick question or two to the two editors, and Aditi and Akhil. After I think Hoshang's Yarana and Ashwini Suptankar's Facing the Mirror, which was a anthology of gay writing. I don't know if there was anything in between, but is this anthology the one after nearly 10 years?
Well, around the same time that Ashwini Suptankar's Facing the Mirror and Hoshang's Yarana came out, there was also the Path Breaking. I mean, Ruth Vanita and Salim
yeah, Ruth's, yeah,
Same-Sex Love, which had a sizable modern section in which in which they included several queer voices. So that has been a very important and influential book for both of us and for classrooms and libraries and bookshops around the country and elsewhere. There was also Minal Hijratwala's book on queer writing, and there have been lots of like online literary magazines which have done queer issues. So by no means is this book like a watershed or like a sufficient break or breaking some kind of silence. Like there has been a lot of engagement with queer writing, and especially because due to the legal journeys of the trans judgment, the Nalsar judgment in the Supreme Court, and the 377 judgment, which has had such a long, painful history. I think the conversation on queerness in various shapes, including the literary, was available. So by the time this book came out, I think sufficient ground for it was available for us. Yeah.
So how, I mean, please tell us, Aditi and Akhil, how did this germinate, this idea of putting together this massive exercise, because it's not just Indian but also South Asian. So how did this all start? And Akhil mentioned, for instance, the judgments that have. Do you think that there was this atmosphere which was conducive to an anthology like this?
I mean, yes, in one sense, but does that mean that this anthology couldn't have come out at any other point? Probably a couple of years ago as well. It could have. So I think how this came into being is also that Akhil and I have been in Delhi and reading at lots of college events, sometimes and mostly focusing on this queer aspect of writing poetry and living in the city. And I think these chance encounters and reading together at many places, also attending different events where a lot of our, other friends, other activists were reading, and I think it sort of I think that led to the germination, in the sense that when like I was in college, I was already reading and hearing about Akhil and looking up to, there is this, at that point, young gay poet.
Even now he is young.
No, at that point,
Younger.
Younger, yeah.
Yeah.
And so when Akhil called one day and said that, Shohini Basak, who's the poetry editor of this book, has proposed this idea, we did not know what we wanted to do with it, because we've met and spoken about various things at different points, and it just seemed like a good idea. And we did not think, I think, so much about the Indian South Asian, but when we both entered that dialogue and we started speaking to the publishers as well, it sort of led us to think that just English writers, just Indian writers is not going to be the kind of book that I think both of us would also be comfortable putting together. Okay.
Actually, Shohini Basak, who's the commissioning editor at HarperCollins, is sort of this kind of shadow third editor of this book, and the kind of much of the enthusiasm and the momentum of the book also is derived from her. So she's the one who came up with the idea and called me and said, this, we are thinking very tentatively, we are thinking of a book of queer poems. And at that point, I immediately thought of Aditi as a co-editor and called her, and thankfully she also came on board. Regarding the book being not just English poems, but poems of translation, like there is no way in which a book that is emerging from kind of the literary traditions and from folks in the subcontinent can be only an English book. Like there is no way in which it's any kind of even the minimal representative claim it can make will be tenable if it remains only an English book. So that was evident that it has to be done, as in the call has to go out in as many languages as possible, and we managed a few. And then the poems have to come to us in as many languages as possible, and we'll translate them. And that has happened to some degree. Whereas the idea that it should not be just an India collection, because already, for instance, when we were putting the book together, some of the queer voices that we looked up to, we learned from, who gave us really complex maps of what a queer life can look like, were from Bangladesh and Pakistan and Nepal. And as Aditi's experiences in poetry organizing, especially queer poetry organizing, also took her, made her navigate essentially a transnational field rather than just an Indian field. So it was going to be a book which was not just, which was going to tip its hat to the subcontinent in some way. Now, the histories of either queer movements or the lives of queer people have both obviously similarities and differences in different regions of the subcontinent. And we each have some things to learn from each other. So, and that has, and apart from the fact that I think, and there is a quasi-political, quasi-sentimental reason for it as well, because this subcontinent has, even though like there's a history of several nation states now coming into being, that's a fairly recent history. I mean, in the memory of my parents and grandparents is when most of these countries' separation has been solidified. So there are shared histories, there are threads which sort of enter and re-enter each other, even as obviously differences are also being differences, different vocabularies, different idioms, different ways of taking stock of queer questions is playing out in Sri Lanka or Pakistan or India or Nepal. But I think the region also has enough commonality. So South Asia might be an American foreign policy term in a very clunky geographical category. But I do think these kind of regions split into now nation states have things to tell each other. And certainly we already knew that queer people from these different nation states are in touch with each other and chat with each other all the time. So there is no reason why the book shouldn't reflect that conversation.
And I know for sure that the penal code is the same, at least in India and Pakistan. But I don't know if, I suppose it's also the same in Bangladesh. I don't know enough about Sri Lanka and Nepal, whether the, whether the same Macaulay penal code is another connecting factor, because that is directly related to the queer question.
Well, I think both the differences and some similarities in legal histories is a connecting factor. The regional proximity of it is a connecting factor. You will often find that Nepal becomes a meeting point for several of different kinds of progressive activists because it was almost like a neutral ground in which different people can meet. So you will find several development of social organizations finding their base over there.
I think languages, I guess.
And language.
Yeah. So between all of them, I think that was a running stream. Yeah.
So, I suppose you ended up with more than 100 poets and in more than 10 languages. Did you actually visualize it like this, or did it just evolve, on the go?
I think it involved, I think it took form in the inbox, as in when every weekend Akhil and I would get on a call, and then we'd be like, oh, this is what we've received, and we would read the poems and then feel ye bhi dalna hai, ye bhi dalna hai. So it just evolved in the inbox, and I think we've written about that evolution in the introduction as well, that how the book actually took form, and I think the contribution has been even beyond just the people who submitted poems to us, people who helped us translate the call for submissions, friends who tagged other friends and said, you might want to send in a poem. A lot of other queries which were about who can submit. Like I think with the book, the title, like we've said, it came to us in one go. So that was the first title and the only title that we considered. But this line that comes in, I think this is where we spoke a little bit, and we're like, do we want to call it a anthology of poetry by queer people from South Asia, or do we want to call it queer poetry? What is queer poetry then? And I think apart from, even though we were still a little uncomfortable with the word anthology as well at that point, I think that is where a lot of debate happened. And I think just formulating that single line also helped us formulate and think a little about what do we want to put in this book and how do we want to do that.
Well, I think, if time permits, I'll come back to this question about this whole, difficult business of definitions. What is a poem? What is queer? What is, how do we select a good poem, and so on and so forth. But I just wanted to ask you quickly, what kind of editorial decisions you had to take? Because anthology making, I think, is always a tricky business, because what is in is sometimes gestures towards what is not in. So what kind of decisions had you had to take, and very quickly, is there something that you really wanted but you could not put it in?
Uh, there, I mean, to your latter question, there's an explosive series of answers. There are lots of things which we wanted, which we finally couldn't actually get.
Mm,
Some on due to the reason that it's just that I think we had to put in a lot more work, and within the time period, we couldn't manage it. But others for other reasons. So, for instance, in one case, the estate of a very prominent poet, now deceased, we were really keen on their work, and they did not allow their poems to be included in the anthology, and they said, for a variety of reasons, we are not approving your request for any of the poems to be included. And there is no way that you can
argue with that.
argue with that, and so that was a moment of huge disappointment for Aditi, Shohini, and I. There was another Tamil poet who we were really keen on including, because we appreciated their work in the past and have read some of it in translation. But they were also very keen to be in the book. But they mentioned that what this anthology did is it, to each poet, it gave a very small amount of money, and if there's a translator involved, then that money was even split into half. So what they thought was that even as they were keen on many voices, queer voices, being published by big publishers like HarperCollins and others, they still thought the money was too little, and they were trying to address pay inequality in mainstream Indian publishing. So finally, they took a very considered decision of not being in the volume. And when we took that question to the publisher, they said, anyway, Indian English poetry is such a, like in terms of resources, it's such a limited sphere. And in that, like to and fro in that conversation, that voice fell through. Like we couldn't include a voice like that. So similarly, we know that Sahitya Academy, for instance, has recently hosted a series of particularly trans poets and their readings in Delhi, in Kolkata, and other places. And there was effort on both on Shohini and our part to get in touch with some of those poets and get the works translated after their permission. But this came towards the end of this anthology being prepared, and again, in terms of time management, etc., we couldn't manage it. So already, if you ask that if there is an edition of this book, let's say 5 years from now or 7 years from now, there are a sizable number of entries, work that need to be here and need to be done. So those are the kind of moments in which I think we felt that the book has to grow even further.
Because I think that was a considered decision, that we did not want to pick poems from other books and put them in this book from poets who are already published, who are recognized. So this search for different voices and voices that we thought were important, and they will add to the conversation that we were trying to initiate. I think that with the time limit and other limitations, definitely I feel like we haven't been able to put in a lot, many voices. And by that, of course, we've also, the first bit of what you just said, the first part of the question, what has been left out can be read in many ways, but we are aware of the limitations of that 100 voices in 10 different languages is not a representation of South Asia, I believe.
So I think you can also safely say that for a variety of reasons you could not include. Right. Yeah, but I was also interested in some of those other decisions, like or let me, because I think we have very little time. We did it eventually shape out the way in which you originally visualized it, or did it take you into completely unexpected, unprepared directions?
Primarily the latter, because when we were sitting in that Noida office of the HarperCollins publishers with 2 or 3 of their representatives and Aditi and I, the conversation was about let's have 30 to 35 poets maximum, and their and the word that was constantly being said was a good quality of verse, and and these poets have to be there. So it seemed like almost the vision had been entirely conceptualized, and the next 8 months or 7 months that vision would pan out. And yet, the moment we stepped out of that office, that vision sort of started splintering. And also because the call had a slightly unpredictable life of its own. Like people started sharing it among each other, people started advising us, so it went into quarters that I think Aditi and I, with our whatever, with the constraints and the possibilities of what we are familiar with and what our vision is and what our caste and class profile is, I think the call would have reached certain quarters. But I think since people started sharing it, and since it went into more than one language, what it yielded for us was a far different terrain, far different vision than was initially and very politely agreed upon. And thankfully that changed.
I think we can continue this discussion, but I think we will play the pre-recorded videos of some of the poets. Obviously, like making an anthology, playing the videos also has to be very selective, unfortunately, for variety of reasons, right?
Good use of that phrase.
Correct. So we will be playing the videos now, one after the other, and since the poets introduce themselves and explain the context of the poem, etc., I don't think we need to, at least I don't need to say anything more, because each poet introduces the poem himself or herself. So we will play the videos and we will come back, and in between, if you want to say anything about any particular poet or poem, please do tell me, and then we can pause the sequence and then we can continue. Okay. So can we have the first video, please? Rajaram Sirsas.
Hello everyone, this is Anish Gawande. I'm incredibly honored to be a part of this anthology of queer poetry, translating Professor Ramchandra Siras. Siras is best known for being outed very publicly at the university and dying by suicide on 8th April 2010. But today I want to remember Siras the poet. Siras the Marathi poet who deserves a place as a queer icon not just because of his own sexuality, but because of his form and his challenging in many ways of the Marathi canon. The poem I'm translating today is from a book called Payakhali Hirwar, which is a collection of poetry by Siras. It's often translated as grass under my feet, but I prefer to translate it as verdant under my feet, sort of indistinguishable greenery. And the poem I want to translate, which is part of this new anthology that you will be seeing very soon, is called Zhopaycha Kholya, Rooms to Sleep in. It's a beautiful, powerful poem, a meditation on love, longing, and belonging. And it's one of the most incredible pieces of poetry I've had the privilege of reading in many years. I will start with the Marathi and read my English translation. झोपायच्या खोल्या. तो आत्ताच घामाघूम झाला आहे, पण उकाडाही फारच आहे. तो मला दाखवतो आज पूर्ण झालेले बांधकाम, त्याच्या स्वप्नांच्या पलीकडे झोपायच्या खोल्या आहेत. जेव्हा हे घर पडून होते बांधायचे, पैशाशिवाय आणि अगोदरच्या मालकाच्या अतृप्त स्वप्नांच्या कडेकोट मोगलाईवरील बंदीशिवाय. तेव्हाच सांगितले होते की डोंगर अडवू नकोस खिडक्यांनी किंवा भिंतींनीही. सरळ येऊ दे त्यांना आत घरात. पाहुण्यासारखे नव्हे तर घरच्यासारखे. पण त्याच्या एककल्ली एकांत वेडाला नको आहेत फुलं देखील खालच्या पायरीवर. नको आहेत सूर सुद्धा मध्य सप्तकातले. फक्त तिकडे त्या झोपायच्या खोल्या, खरोखर त्याच उपयोगाकरता बांधलेल्या. तिथे वारा, शांतता, निर्मळपणा आणि सहज मिळणारा स्वप्न प्रवासाचा परवाना. त्याला नको आहेत जादूचे रंग आणि अभेद्य उजेडाची रचना आणि झोपेच्या गोळ्यांची जागा. त्याने आपणच बांधली आहे स्वतःच्या उरल्या आयुष्याची एक स्वप्न सुंदर कबर. आणि तो त्याला झोपायच्या खोल्या म्हणतो. It's a beautiful, beautiful poem with textured layers of sadness, textured layers of loneliness, and a certain incompleteness and unfinishedness that I hope has been able to come out in the translation. Rooms to sleep in. He's already bathed in sweat. It's very hot, after all. He shows me work of his dreams completed just today. Beyond are rooms to sleep in. When this house lay unbuilt, no money and no constraints of the previous owner's incomplete dreams, I told him, don't block the mountains with windows or walls even. Let them come right into the house, not like guests, but family. But his obstinate, mad love for solitude wants not flowers on the steps below, wants not tunes in middle octaves. Here, only those rooms to sleep in. Only those were built for a purpose. There, wind, silence, softness, and that parvana of easy dream journeys. Once not magical colors and unfiltered compositions of sunlight and drawers to keep sleeping pills. He has built for himself, for what remains of his life, a grave as beautiful as Epiphany's, and he calls it Rooms to Sleep in. I hope that many who come after me build upon this poem, build upon the book that Siras has written, because Siras the queer icon cannot be forgotten. But Siras the transgressive poet, Siras the poet of a queer loneliness, cannot be forgotten. Thank you. Hello everyone.
Akhil, you can keep your camera on so that it doesn't sound like Akashwani. Tech team, just ensure that the video is going well on the YouTube, because I saw some freezing there. Okay, so we'll have the second video now, please.
I'll start with congratulating Aditi and Akhil for bringing together this anthology of South Asian queer poetry. It's much needed. I would also thank them for graciously considering my contribution into this book. I really feel honored. I'll be today reading for you my poem which makes up to the book and the English translation of it by Akhil Katyal. The poem was written more as as remembering Rohit Vemula after its institutional murder, but resonates so much for all of us for whom to be Dalit is to be queer in queer spaces, and it's poetry about survival, it's poetry about lamentation and mourning for everybody that we are losing every day, which are countless, for all our struggles to survive. It's poetry for our survival. It's called Ab Matam Aur Manaun Kya. अब मातम और मनाऊं क्या, अब मातम और मनाऊं क्या, एक टूटे सपने को कितना और कैसा शोक हुआ तुमको शब्दों में बतलाऊं क्या, अब मातम और मनाऊं क्या, कितने दीवाने पतझड़ के बहारों में बदनाम हुए और कितनी बहारों के आशिक पतझड़ में नीलाम हुए, नाम पते लिखवाऊं क्या, अब मातम और मनाऊं क्या, फिर से मेरी बस्तियों से लाशों के मजमे चले, फिर से मेरी बस्तियों से आग की लपटें उगी, सर्वहारा की ये चीखें तुमको भी सुननी पड़ेंगी, तुमको भी गिननी पड़ेंगी। सिफारिशें सब मंत्री जी की खून से लथपथ पड़ी है, संविधान पर महोदय लाश बन करके पड़ी है, बोलो तो हरिजनों से बोलकर उठवाऊं क्या, बोलो तो बहुजनों से बोलकर उठवाऊं क्या, अब मातम और मनाऊं क्या, एक टूटे सपने को कितना और कैसा शोक हुआ तुमको शब्दों में बतलाऊं क्या, अब मातम और मनाऊं क्या। And it's beautiful because Rohit, in his last letter, which to most of us is a love letter that he writes, love poetry that he writes, he imagines what does it mean to go from shadows to the stars. At that note, I'll read the English translation of this, which is much more beautiful than what I just read in Hindi, though. And it was translated back, and I'm going to read it for you. In English, it says, "Should I mourn a little longer? Should I mourn a little longer? How he nursed a broken dream, how much he nursed a broken dream. Should I touch his night with words? Should my lament be stronger? Should I mourn a little longer? How those craved autumn's last night were exiled by the spring, how those in spring's light hours were auctioned off his autumn's claim. Should I say his name? Should I say each of their names? Would you care to note them down? Should your ink be darker, your hand stronger? Should I mourn a little longer? The shrouds are again leaving my part of the town. My town has again erupted in flames. You will have to listen to the screams of my people. You will have to listen to their names. You will have to keep count. The minister's recommendations lie soaked in blood, stillborn on the pages of the Constitution. Should I just close the file, junk the folder? Should I ask the Harijans to carry it on their shoulder? And you stand mute. Should I ask the Bahujans to lend their hand? Your silence has always been a warmonger. Should I mourn a little longer? Should I mourn a little longer? Thank you so much. I'll start with...
Very moving. Yeah, can we have the third poet, please?
My sister takes a long, long time to die. It was the dark of winter when the illness came like a thunderclap. They isolated an Indian girl in the Chicago snow, hoping this Indian disease would go away. But it was America that had killed her. The sickness in us is named America, and the long, long time of waiting does not go away. She had waited long in the dark of her Lord, the Lord she called Father, who never had a kind word, the Lord who giveth and taketh away, and now is the time of taking away. The man she calls Lord and man's servant, the lover with fair hair and blue eyes, who ferries her hither and thither like Sharon, my sister, as she hangs by a slender thread that cannot snap, because the long, long time of waiting is never dead. And she called Death her brother, brilliant, charismatic Death. Death who loves and beguiles and kills but does not beget. Death, the brother who no sister in life can wed. That unfulfilled love, that great longing that does not die. That long, long time of waiting never dies. And now in the brilliance of summer, of melting light and butterflies, she floats between dark and light as on a river a swan doubly glides. One half flesh, one half shadow, sister and brother, reality and reflection on one river. She has crossed life's flood on a reed. She awaits a boat now to ferry her to the other side. And the long, long wait she waits for all of us will never die.
Wow, that's her sharing for us. Yeah, can we have the next video, please?
His moving parts, knees. Capped, conquering and careful, your knee. Such concern, so crystalline, nothing tougher, nothing bolder. It can also bend. In bed, your knees have found my warmth, lingered and pushed, only to meet resistance, restraint, and refrain. Equal parts yielding to being desired, equal parts fearing sweet, crushing death. You've always been so gentle with your tools, tougher, bolder at times, like a rabbit boring its way through the downs. Your knees have purpose, they've got principles and are quite the pervert. Your knees always betray your mind with a knock. Under the table of a dingy bar, they've been bumped into me to remind me that I'm here with you, and no one else, not even my own self. On sofas at dinner parties, they've egged me to speed up my goodbyes. At nightclubs and over nightcaps, it tallies my cigarettes and chides me on my excesses. Digging into the small of my back in the middle of the night, they prompt me to dissolve into you. You know, one of my lovers would always invite me to things with the question, would you like to join? I love this awkward phrasing. It glows with possibility. It made me feel like on encountering each other, we'd immediately lose all boundaries and merge into the other. He always disappointed. Your knees remind me that at night, turning into putty on your knob ensures in the morning we'll be pliable, plastic, and pleased. All his moving parts.
That's Joseph. Can we have the next video? I hope we'll have at least some time to, comment on some of these poems. So let's play the video next.
Sir, I'm playing it right now.
Yeah, thank you.
My name is Rajiv Mahabir, and I'm reading my poem Inside the Belly 1. The seaman, James Bartley, screams as he slides down a sperm whale's maw in 1891. He was in the stomach for 15 hours, unconscious in the stench of digesting fish. He survived after his shipmate sliced the belly open and pulled his twitching body into bed, where he stayed for almost a month. If this happened today, he would take 70 selfies and post them online. According to the tales, he lost his sight and his skin whitened. He wasn't holding any blade. 2. A black swallower can take a man twice as big as himself, his jaws distendable. Catching them by the tail, he walks them over to his mouth. This is the marine biology of deadly desire. By most imperial standards in 1891 by the British East India Company, my biology is a metaphor for black. I am dark-skinned, for my family's Indian. As a child, I prayed to be white until my foreskin started to whiten. This is not the deep sea, so spotting men is not impossible. The internet is a type of black swallower too. 3. A humpback hums as it tongues me. He doesn't spit me out after I come in his mouth. I want to shed my skin for a white coat. I ride him into the starless cold water of an unnamed sea. His flanks toss me from the bow, make the scales fall from my eyes. 4. According to the Royal College of Surgeons, any mating is a death wish. A wish for whiteness is every white man you bed. Consider the bull shark that swallows a blowfish whole, or why you refresh your screen with the Load More Guys feature on the app. When it reaches the stomach, it endures the acid and inflates before chewing through the shark's stomach lining. Kipling's sailor placed a grating in the whale's pharynx to protect it from STIs. But you like to cast cowries. Stomach acid kills everything. Your stomach still lurches with every tritone ring. Which white man will you invite inside tonight? Let erase you slowly. Thank you.
Yeah. Can we have the next, please? I think this is the Metis poet. Yeah. Can we have the next poet?
Hello, my name is Santa Kurai and I'm from Manipur. I'm a transgender activist, artist and a writer. I belong to one indigenous community called Meitei in Manipur. Nupi Manbi, I call myself as Nupi Manbi, which can be translated as transgender women in English. I have contributed 2 poems in Anthology, which has been published by Harper & Collins. The name of the book is The World Belongs to Us. This anthology is the first of its kind in the entire South Asia region. As a part of introducing all the contributors, I have also taken this opportunity to introduce myself by reading out one poem out of the 2 which has been selected for this anthology. The poems are My Father and the Nupi Manbi Thabal. So I'll be reading My Father for this introduction. My hand wrapped around his finger, he taught me to walk. with pride, flaunted me to the world, shared his future with me, with a dream I had, reinstated his position, I as a father and he as a grandfather, the wind of change visited, and disturbed hopes, dreams, and belief. My dolls provoking him. The female vocal cord insulted the innocent fatherhood. My teacher who taught me the ways of the world abandoned me without sympathy. My temperament transformed him into a demon. But I was neither a traitor nor a liar. The more the truth provoked him, the more he strove to impose the father's belief which my tender mind could ever raise. My heart throbbed at the scene, the torn doors, the broken casket, the harsh warning voice. Demarcation of man and women forced the effeminate to soldier manly responsibility. Dig, cultivate, harvest, and mend fences. Crockily my father roared out his wishes, bamboo baton and the hard palm welcoming me. My lamentation and wails went unheard. All and sundry commented dreadfully, abnormal, homo, black sheep, and bad omen. These memories of my childhood created the demon in me, mind filled with hatred, disgust, and revenge, even as I found irresistible those of my same kind, timed and took him away from my life. The grey hair, missing tooth, and weakened body, he lay now on a white lion clothes that matched his height, nose fitted with two small cotton balls, breathless, lifeless. He lay in the middle of the courtyard, kids and kin forlornly mourn for the death. In the midst, this kind-hearted humankind counseled me to wear faison. Hearing it, I felt as if I was bathing in a pond filled to the brim with tilaikumbi. The slim bond of love for my father, the pangs of losing him. Everything vanished in a moment, starting looking for exit. The humankind compelled me to refrain from the angst. Fresh wall was built between the dead and my gender. He was burned at the crematorium, the place where many women too were consigned to fire after they died. There he went thus, leaving no legacy of his own gender, without leaving behind a separate cremation ground for men. Thank you.
Yeah. Can we have the next one? I think this is the Hindi and the English translations.
So please excuse me, it's taking a minute.
Hi, I'm going to read Kharidari. खरीदारी ए की है बर्फ मैं नंगे पैर दौड़ तुप्यासी आखिर दिन मिलन नहीं आई ऐना तड़पी में लिया एक सिल्ली मेरी रूह ते रख दे ए की है रेत मैं कोई मकबरा नहीं छोटे कंकरा नाल मेरा की कम हाँ लेकिन लाश है उसकी ख्वाहिशां दी लिया बोरी पा दे ए की है लून रत्तोवाल तो नवा शहर नाट पई तां बेचिया सी जे ओहियो सहेली कोलों लिआंदा है तां मेरे मूंह 'ਚ रख दे ए की है मी मुसलमाना तो कर लिया सी पिछे पीरां दी जगह नहीं टाई जे उसे मज़ार तो चुक्या है तां मेरी छाती ना ला दे ए की है तुड़ा लाहौर दियां होन या जम्मू दियां अगे कुछ नहीं दसदियां जे उसते सिले हत्थां दी ठंड है तां मेरे बालां विच सिया दे
Yeah, we'll now have her English translation also.
I'm going to read Kharidari, the English translation by Jasdeep Singh. What is this? Ice. I ran bare feet, searching like mad. Why didn't you come for the last time? I pined beyond measure. Come, put one slab on my soul. What is this? Sand. I'm not a Muslim. What do I need these pebbles for? Yes, but the corpse of my desires lies here. Empty the full sack on it. What is this? Salt. Traded off when we had to flee from Ratowal, that Punjab, to Nawa Shahar, this Punjab. If you got it from her, put it in my mouth. What is this? Rain. We got the house from the Muslims, but we kept the peace shrine in the backyard intact. If the raindrops are from there, get them close to my heart. What is this? Fog. Whether from Lahore or Jammu, it won't let you see. If it is the chill from her moist hands, put it in my hair. Thank you.
Oops. What happened?
No, it ended fine.
It ended, Vijay sir.
Oh, I thought she completed it. Anyway,
It was
thank you.
restarting.
One more.
It was restarting, and so I stopped it.
Bhutto. Yeah, the reason why I chose these is to give a sense of the different languages. We had Marathi, we had Hindi, and we had Punjabi, and so that.
Hello, my name is Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, and I am reading for you today a poem I wrote titled The New Leader, which is being included in the South Asia Queer Anthology. The New Leader. I've heard he likes cats and dogs. That must mean he has a kind heart. When she smiles, it feels oh so genuine. They have a good relationship with India. An upside to this may mean we'll have peace. They have a military background, so does that mean war? In which case, we need to raise the walls of our house, put in a reinforced gate, make sure our passports are up to date, renew our visas. Oh, but you can't do that anymore. So get new visas. He's quite strict, which is bad for some. Bad for the bad guys. He'll lock them up real quick. Harsher punishments mean less crime. Bullshit. Our drawing rooms need to become meeting spaces. If not our drawing rooms, our bedrooms. If not our bedrooms, then those dingy alleyways you meet your lovers in for a quick blowjob and a cock up the ass. Hill Park, Frere Hall Gardens, that empty spot on Clifton Beach. You name it, Janu. Turn your nonverbal cruising into verbal resistance. Make every conversation into an insinuation of revolution. Every wink a portal into a new world order. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Don't worry about the freezing because we will upload the correct videos on the YouTube by removing these and inserting the original ones. Okay, thank you very much. We have some time, and the reason why I left some time for later is so that you can just comment on any of these poems or any other poem in the anthology, or I would like each of you to tell us anything that really surprised you, something that you were unprepared for, and then it came as a, I don't know, pleasant or unpleasant or whatever surprise. So any incident that you remember, any particular episode, that anecdote that you would like to share with us. Aditi first.
I think we were when we were preparing for the launch date or for the book to come out for months and months, and it kept getting pushed later. And when it came out in 2020, we thought it's come out at a time where I don't know what will we be able to do with it. But I find it extremely interesting because it has allowed, like in this session, right, it has allowed us to include almost every poet who was willing to share videos with us at various readings. That's what we've been doing, and I don't think this would have been possible if all of us were not locked inside our rooms behind computer screens. So that's the part I find very interesting. Like the two videos that we played, the one by Joshua and the other one by Rajiv, and you can see that portrait with a veil, and he's reading that particular poem and then there's a performance happening, and I come from that space of spoken word poetry and performance, and I'm actually very happy, and I've been excited about this part, that the poets have been able to perform their own poems and come on screen and share it with people, which wouldn't have been possible. So I think that's my highlight from 2020, that it managed to do something great.
Akhil?
One of the things which actually stunned me a little and moved me a lot was the choice of poem that Anish Gawande made in order to translate from Dr. Ramchandra Srinivas Siras's book, Grass Under My Feet, or what he calls Verdant Under My Feet. Because just the phrasing of that poem, rooms where the object of desire are rooms to sleep in. He has built for himself a what remains of his life, a grave as beautiful as Epiphanies. He calls it rooms to sleep in. And the kind of absolutely crazy parallel that draws from the last years of Dr. Siras's life, where even that shred of dignity was taken away from him, and that little enclave of privacy that he created for himself was intruded upon by people, and he went through a process of humiliation in the last few years of his life, that despite and this happened after the Delhi High Court judgment of 2009. So despite the reversal of the university's decision and the suspension being revoked, Dr. Siras did not live to make the most of what his life held in front of him in the subsequent years. So I think just the desire for rooms to sleep in, for calm, for rest, for the day to settle peacefully into night, I think that was incredibly poignant. And since I don't read Marathi, when Anish talked me through the poem and decided that this is the one he's going to translate, I thought that was pretty remarkable. A book that he had written in the 90s was to prefigure so much of what would happen later in his life in the most odd and difficult way.
Was there a problem? Okay. Yeah. For me, what really struck me was, not only here, but even in, Yarana and Facing the Mirror, the loneliness and the sense of being cut off from others, and each one in a way imprisoned in one's own identities. I thought, the 1 year of lockdown that we have been going through is probably, the right, metaphorically, it's the right time for an anthology like this, because in a way, it really brings out the loneliness of queer voices.
And that
festival.
And usually if you will find that the tropes around various kinds of LGB, I think primarily LGB events, is often that of celebration and of pride and of a kind of kind of an enthusiasm, something which supposed to overwhelm you. And I think what that often sometimes hides from us are these individual struggles, which often in which people, I think, strike their head against a wall in various ways, and that is true, of course, of people whose identities crisscross with several other forms of marginalities. And I think, and what this book does, I mean, what several of the poets in the book do is mark that, and I don't think any celebration which the book also marks is indifferent or unaware of these very lonely struggles which happen behind the scenes, which thankfully haven't remained behind the scenes in several of their works.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you so much, both Aditi and Akhil, not only for coming and joining us live, but also for allowing us to play the videos that you had. And this is an anthology that I'm sure will be, I think, in some ways, probably a kind of a beginning for another anthology that you already said. What could not be part of this anthology? I'm sure, if not an anthology, definitely a conversation about queer issues in a more open and in a more what should I say, secure surroundings. Thank you so much, Aditi and Akhil, and we are very happy that we were able to bring both of you and the anthology to HLF.
Thank you, Vijay and Jyoti and your entire tech team. You're doing a great job with putting.
పున్నాము వెన్నాల కోలు పూసి కాసిందే కోలు
పున్నాము వెన్నెల కోలు పూసి కాసిందే కోలు
నీరు నిమ్మల కింద గన్నెర్ల కింద వంగి పూలే రంగ కొంగందుకునే వంగి